When we begin the journey of understanding the human mind, one of the most liberating yet painful realizations we can ever arrive at is that the difficult people in our lives are not just random anomalies. They fall into highly specific, deeply ingrained psychological patterns. In my work, I have spent decades mapping out these exact patterns, because when you can name the dynamic you are trapped in, you finally regain the power to break free from it. Narcissism is not a monolith. It is a complex spectrum that manifests in very distinct archetypes. If we want to truly protect our sanity, we have to understand these different faces of manipulation, because the strategy you use to defend yourself depends entirely on the specific type of toxic ego you are facing. The most classical form of this behavior, the archetype that almost everyone instantly visualizes when they hear the word, is what we call grandiose narcissism. This is your textbook, armchair definition of a self-centered individual. The grandiose personality is loudly arrogant, deeply pretentious, constantly preening, and entirely status-oriented. They navigate the world with a permanent look-at-me attitude, and they are obsessively invested in outward appearances, wealth, titles, and social standing. Interestingly, from a purely clinical standpoint, grandiose individuals often experience the most stable life outcomes, simply because they rarely view themselves as victims. As long as external circumstances are aligning with their grand delusions, they remain relatively content in their superiority. Now, make no mistake. Being in a relationship with a grandiose person is profoundly unhealthy, but when we compare the archetypes, it is very much a clinical discussion of what is the least devastating scenario. Grandiose personalities are completely forward-facing. They need the world to see them as champions, rulers, and icons, and this specific, overt presentation is what psychiatric manuals have classically focused on for the past several decades. However, the most significant, critical evolution in the modern conversation surrounding mental health is the identification of vulnerable narcissism. This is the archetype that we, as a society, miss almost every single time because they completely lack the shiny, charismatic, and compelling veneer of the grandiose type. A vulnerable narcissistic person does not walk into a room demanding applause. Instead, they enter the space wrapped in a cloud of sullen petulance, deep-seated resentment, and a chronic sense of victimization. They are profoundly passive-aggressive, intensely bitter, and perpetually angry at the world. Their entire internal narrative is dictated by a toxic why-me mentality. They look at everyone else's success and genuinely believe they have been cheated out. Because vulnerable narcissists frequently project sadness, emotional fragility, and intense social anxiety, an outside observer will look at them and think, there is no way this person is narcissistic, they seem so insecure and poorly put together. This fragile exterior is a highly dangerous trap because it acts as a magnetic pull for natural rescuers, empaths, and helpers. You see them struggling, and your immediate instinct is to offer them an opportunity, loan them money, give them a place to live, or provide endless emotional support. But the moment you step into their orbit, you realize that the vulnerable narcissist is an absolute psychological vortex, a bottomless black hole where no matter how much love, resource, time, validation, or encouragement you pour into them, it is never, ever enough. They remain completely frozen in their self-pity, refusing to grow, while entirely draining your life force in the process. What makes this dynamic even more complex is that grandiose and vulnerable narcissism are actually deeply connected, complementary structures within the human psyche. They are two sides of the exact same coin. If a grandiose individual experiences a severe, prolonged series of structural failures, if they lose their wealth, their status, or their adoring audience, their heavy lid of perfection shatters, and they will instantly transform into a sullen, aggrieved, vulnerable narcissist, claiming the whole world is out to get them. Conversely, if a vulnerable narcissist suddenly encounters a massive wave of external success or unearned status, their suppressed grandiosity will violently pop back out, and they will immediately become arrogant and dismissive. While individuals usually gravitate primarily toward one side of the spectrum, fluctuating life circumstances can easily flip the switch and cause the hidden side to emerge. It is also vital to note how these dynamics intersect with societal expectations and gender roles. Statistically, grandiose narcissism is much more heavily prevalent in men, largely because traditional social structures have historically rewarded overt dominance and arrogance in males. Vulnerable narcissism, however, is pretty much equally distributed across all genders. But because women are conditioned by society to express distress through emotional vulnerability rather than outward aggression, when you do encounter a highly narcissistic female, malignant narcissists are driven by an intense vindictiveness and a genuine desire to inflict harm. They experience a twisted sense of satisfaction from identifying your deepest psychological vulnerabilities and deliberately using them to isolate, destabilize, and control you. Their charm is short-lived and transactional. It is merely the bait they use to capture you. Once a malignant person secures you in an intimate relationship, their obsession with total domination takes over. They will disguise extreme control as overwhelming love, insisting on spending every single second with you, demanding to know why you would ever want to see your friends or family, and subtly shaming you for having a life outside of them. They are the type of partner who will buy you an expensive new phone or device as a generous gift, while secretly using it to track your location, monitor your messages, and police your daily interactions. I constantly advise young people to maintain absolute sovereignty over their own technology, their own bank accounts, and their own phone plans. Never accept these highly dependent digital gifts until you are entirely certain that the relationship is built on a foundation of verified psychological safety. Malignant relationships can easily become physically dangerous. While all forms of emotional manipulation are devastating, actual physical violence, overt aggression, and malicious smear campaigns are statistically most likely to manifest within a malignant dynamic, followed secondarily by the volatile, petulant eruptions of a vulnerable narcissist. Then, we enter the fascinating and highly deceptive world of the communal narcissist. I frequently refer to this archetype as the shirt-off-your-back manipulator. These are the individuals who build their entire public reputation on being incredibly generous, humanitarian, and deeply invested in saving the world. They are the pillars of the community, the champions of local charities, the activists shouting the loudest for a cause, and the volunteers organizing every public event. They receive their daily dose of high-grade narcissistic supply by convincing the public that they are saints. Now, people often argue that true human altruism does not exist, and that everyone who does good in the world is doing it for some level of personal validation. But for a healthy person, validation is a secondary byproduct of doing the right thing. For a communal narcissist, public praise is the only reason they exist. The easiest way to identify a communal narcissist is to observe what happens when the cameras turn off or when the public stops cheering. If they do not receive an endless stream of public congratulations, awards, and vocal recognition for their charity work, they become deeply enraged. Because they cannot unleash that rage on the public without ruining their holy reputation, they bring that venom home and take it out entirely. This is why the world is frequently shocked when horrific leaks emerge about a beloved celebrity humanitarian, exposing them as a nightmare behind the scenes. It is why the children of a celebrated community leader will grow up in intense trauma, weeping because while the entire town viewed their father as a heroic savior who built the local youth sports fields, the family was secretly suffocating under the reign of a cruel, cold, and tyrannical monster at the dinner table. At the absolute peak of severity, a communal narcissist possesses the exact psychological architecture of a dangerous cult leader, twisting morality to gain total authority over a group. At the more common, mild end of the spectrum, they manifest as the tyrannical school committee member or the hyper-controlling neighborhood organizer who completely destroys the emotional well-being of everyone around them, all while hiding behind the bulletproof shield of claiming, "I am doing all of this for the greater good." In reality, the rise of social media has caused the population of communal narcissists to explode, providing a global stage where they can post videos of themselves rescuing animals on a beach or declaring every day as a new day of self-sacrificing service, using public virtue to shame others, demanding to know why you haven't volunteered your time, and weaponizing morality to elevate themselves above the ordinary population. Finally, we have the self-righteous narcissist. Clinically, this archetype heavily overlaps with what used to be termed the anancastic personality style, a rigid, obsessive-compulsive focus on strict detail, flawless morality, and absolute order. These individuals are frequently extreme workaholics who live highly calculated, militarily structured, and obsessively ordered lives. They are intensely stingy with their finances, profoundly cold in their interpersonal connections, and deeply punitive when anyone around them makes a human mistake. If someone disrupts their hyper-rigid schedule or challenges their precise way of living, the self-righteous narcissist will unleash an icy wave of profound shaming. They operate with a permanent internal monologue that states, "I live my life better than you, my discipline is superior to yours, and therefore, I am a better human being than you." If dinner is strictly scheduled for 6 o'clock, and a family member is delayed by 15 minutes because they are dealing with a crying child or an unexpected traffic delay, the self-righteous narcissist will not offer an ounce of understanding. They will sit at the table, lock the doors, eat their meal, and coldly declare, "Dinner begins at 6, and we have already eaten." Growing up with a self-righteous narcissistic parent is a uniquely chilling, soul-crushing experience for a child. There is zero warmth, zero emotional safety, and zero room for error. The children of these parents grow up with chronic, low-level anxiety because their home felt like a military barracks where the bedrooms had to be perfectly arranged, the schedules were. Why did I blame myself for so long? The answer is wired directly into our evolutionary biology. As human beings, our primary directive for survival is attachment. We are social, tribal creatures. When we are children, maintaining a connection to our primary caregiver is a matter of life or death. There is no alternative plan, and we cannot simply hire new parents. Because a child's brain cannot process the terrifying reality that their parent is an unsafe, unloving monster, the psyche implements a brilliant, desperate survival mechanism. It internalizes the guilt. The child convinces themselves, "My parent isn't bad, I am just a bad kid. If I can just become quieter, smarter, and completely invisible, my parent will finally love me." They learn to shrink their true identity down to nothing just to survive the system. When that child grows into an adult, they carry that exact same survival blueprint directly into their romantic relationships and careers. The moment a partner or a boss treats them with invalidation, cruelty, or manipulation, their brain automatically defaults to the childhood script: "How can I fix this? What am I doing wrong? How am I contributing to their anger?" We lean heavily into rationalizations like cognitive dissonance and betrayal blindness. A phenomenon where our minds conveniently ignore glaring red flags because facing the truth would require us to break the attachment and leave, which feels terrifying. We tell ourselves they are just having a bad day, or that if we keep the house cleaner, they won't yell. When you overlay that internal vulnerability with the narcissist's active, calculated gaslighting, the victim is completely brainwashed into believing they are the toxic one. Without someone stepping in to explain the psychological blueprint of what is actually happening, the victim will absorb that blame as their permanent identity, walking through life carrying a deep sense of unworthiness that was systematically handed to them by a broken person. This is why true recovery must begin with learning to listen to the somatic language of your own body. We almost always feel the toxicity in our physical nervous system long before our logical mind can name it. Survivors will realize they feel entirely wiped out, physically exhausted, and deeply unwell after spending even an hour with this person. They find themselves procrastinating, feeling an intense knot of dread in their stomach on Friday afternoon. What is your internal experience? But in the context of a narcissistic dynamic, that approach is a massive failure. As a therapeutic framework, we must look past the victim's internal processing and directly address the active psychological war zone they are living in. We have to validate the external reality that they are dealing with a deeply entitled, highly manipulative person who is actively eating their soul alive. For many empathetic individuals, the hardest hurdle to clear is overcoming the trap of toxic positivity. We tell ourselves, "But I can see their deep childhood wounds, I know they are hurting inside, so I need to be stronger and have more compassion for them." But compassion without boundaries is absolute self-sabotage. No human being on this earth should ever be drafted into the role of being another adult's emotional punching bag or psychological pacifier. A narcissist does not care about your compassion. They will completely consume your life, drain your energy, and leave you empty without a single shred of regret. Intelligence and empathy have absolutely nothing to do with each other. A person can be an incredibly brilliant executive, an exceptional intellectual, or a master cook, and simultaneously possess a heart that is completely devoid of empathy. You have to learn to hold those two realities in a single, realistic sentence. They are highly talented, and they do not care about my existence. The absolute turning point of your healing journey occurs when you realize that waking up to this reality does not require you to pack your bags and stage a dramatic exit if you are financially or logistically unable to leave right now. True power is about implementing a strict internal boundary known as the "don't go deep" framework. This means you completely stop defending your choices, you stop engaging in their circular arguments, you stop explaining your reasoning, and you absolutely stop personalizing their cruel behavior. If a narcissistic spouse looks at you and aggressively demands, "Why do you never take out the trash," even though you are the one who has taken it out perfectly every single day for the last 5 years, your old programming will drive you to defend yourself. You will want to bring out the facts, explain that you took it out yesterday in the rain, and try to force them to see the truth. But you must realize they are not looking for a quantitative breakdown of household chores, they are explicitly fishing for a fight. They want to watch you scramble, get defensive, and burn your emotional energy trying to earn their approval. When you use the framework, you completely cut off the supply. When they ask why you never take out the trash, you look at them with total emotional detachment and simply say, "Okay." And you walk away. You do not explain, you do not justify, and you do not participate in the performance. When you stop defending yourself, you will initially feel a deep wave of profound sadness and intense grief. You will look at your relationship and realize that all you have left to safely talk about with your partner is the weather, the change of seasons, or a closure on the local freeway. But that grief is the exact price of admission to your freedom. It is the raw, radical acceptance that this relationship will never possess depth, will never be a safe haven, and will never be a partnership where they stand by your side during the dark nights of your soul. The moment you accept that reality clearly, you can stop wasting your precious life trying to extract water from a dry well. You can finally step off the exhausting carousel, lock the gates to your inner world, and start pouring that beautiful, life-giving energy back into the supportive, loving connections that actually deserve access to your soul.